There's something about dawn in the Colorado backcountry, a silence just before the world stirs, broken only by the wind skimming along ancient red rocks. Wildlife Officer Maya Green was used to early mornings, but nothing about this sunrise felt routine. The radio on her dashboard crackled, static jittering between words. Distress cries, near Devil's Bend. Could be an animal in trouble. The dispatcher sounded strained, even for a Monday. Maya checked her map, heart already picking up speed. Devil's Bend wasn't just remote. It was the kind of wild where rescue teams sometimes took longer to find their way in than the Lost did to get in trouble. She turned onto a narrow, muddy road, tires spitting pebbles behind her, and parked her battered state-issued truck as close as she could to the canyon's edge. Outside, dawn was shivering up the stone, sky painted blue and gold, cliffs still slick and black from last night's storm. Maya hiked fast, gear clanking, boots sliding on the churned mud. The cries were faint, echoing off the walls below, a sound she couldn't quite place. Animal? Human? It sounded urgent, desperate. At the rim, Maya found herself staring down a vertical drop. Jagged rocks, thorny juniper, the sort of landscape where only mountain goats felt at home. She hesitated just long enough to assess the safest descent, then snapped her climbing rope to a weathered tree, double-checked her harness, and started down. Every inch was a risk. Rain had made the sandstone greasy. Her gloves slipped twice before she reached a narrow ledge, panting, eyes straining for movement. That's when she saw him. A black stallion, massive, wild, coated in dust and streaks of dried blood, stood halfway down the canyon floor. He was backed into a tight corner, sides heaving, mane tangled and glistening with rain. Every muscle was tensed, ready to kick, bite, charge at shadows if he had to. Maya froze. The stallion's eyes locked onto hers, nostrils flaring, the whites showing like lightning. A wild horse this far up? Unusual, but not unheard of. But why wasn't he running? She scanned the ground around him, heart thudding. Just outside the stallion's range, a pack of coyotes circled, tails low, ears flattened, hunger in their eyes. Overhead, a red-tailed hawk spun lazy circles, calling out as if announcing to all scavengers below. Something's down there. Something's hurt. But the stallion wasn't hurt enough to be finished. He stomped the ground, driving the coyotes back with a snarl and a show of teeth that was all rage, all desperation. Maya caught her breath. Something was under him, something he was guarding with every last ounce of his battered strength. She inched closer, voice low, steady, a trick she'd learned in years of working with feral mustangs. Easy. Easy, boy. I'm not here to hurt you. The horse's ears flicked at her, but his gaze never wavered from the threat of the circling predators. Maya noticed the blood on his haunch. Deep scratches, probably from the rocks. Maybe a coyote's teeth. He was exhausted, barely standing, but still, he guarded the hidden shape beneath his belly like a dragon hoarding gold. The cries rose again, piercing, fragile. Not a foal. The sound was too high, too human. Maya's heart slammed into her ribs. She slid down the last 6 feet, boots landing hard, adrenaline washing away fear. She could see now, a small, bundled form pressed into the mud beneath the stallion's protective chest. A baby, swaddled in a dirty pink blanket, face streaked with tears and rain, fists clenched in silent terror. The horse stamped, snorted, lowered his head as if daring the world to try and take her. Thunder. That's your name, isn't it? Maya whispered, half to herself, half to the animal. She'd heard of him, a legend among local wranglers. Wild, unbreakable. Some called him a ghost, others a menace, but no one called him gentle. And yet, here he was, risking everything for a helpless child, not his own. The coyotes lunged forward again, driven by hunger. Thunder wheeled, hooves flashing, sending two yelping back into the brush. Maya seized her radio, calling for backup, for animal control, for anyone close enough to reach her before things turned worse. Officer down the canyon at Devil's Bend. Emergency, infant in immediate danger. Wild stallion present, aggressive. Predators active. Send rescue and medical now. Repeat, now. The response was instant, voices overlapping with urgency. Stay put, Maya. We're coming. But she knew coming in this terrain could mean 20 minutes, maybe more. She would have to buy that time herself. She dug into her backpack, tossing an emergency flare toward the coyotes, sending them scattering. Thunder stomped in panic, almost pinning the baby in his frenzy. Maya threw up her hands, talking as gently as she could, voice trembling only a little. It's okay. I'm not taking her. Look, I'm here to help. Her hands shook as she opened a water bottle, pouring it into her cupped palm and holding it out, slow, deliberate, never meeting Thunder's gaze head-on. Rain dripped from the cliffs above, cold and steady. Thunder's flanks quivered. Blood dripped from a wound on his leg. Still, he never moved from his post over the child. Maya could feel his panic and pain, the kind of terror that came from loss, the kind that made even the wildest animal risk everything to protect something small and fragile. Was it instinct? Memory? Or just a desperate act by a creature who'd lost too much? She eased closer, inch by inch, talking about nothing. About the sun coming up, about grass, about apples and warm barns and gentle hands. Anything to keep her own fear from spilling out. The baby's cries grew softer, her energy spent. Maya saw the rise and fall of her chest, the way her tiny hand curled around Thunder's long mane, as if even in her confusion she knew this animal was her shield. The rescue team's voices echoed faintly above, harnesses clattering as they set up a safer descent. But Maya knew the real rescue had already begun. The moment a battered stallion decided the world wasn't going to take this life without a fight. Dawn broke fully then, gold light pouring into the canyon, catching on Thunder's black coat and the baby's pink blanket, making them both look like something out of a myth, a legend written in hoofprints and tears. And Maya, standing between wild and human, realized she'd never seen courage quite like this. Not in all her years out here. Not ever. The sun was climbing higher, burning the early mist off the canyon walls by the time Maya heard the clatter of boots and harnesses echoing above. The rescue team was finally nearing the ledge, voices tense and urgent as they checked lines and equipment. Maya's radio buzzed. Visual on you and the stallion, Maya. Any movement down there? She pressed the button, keeping her eyes on Thunder. He's still guarding the baby. Predators circling. He's keeping them back. I need a medic and animal control now. Her voice was low, never rising above the soft hum of the wind. Every syllable for Thunder's benefit, not the men up top. Thunder's body trembled with exhaustion, muscles bunched, his head dipped protectively over the tiny bundle at his hooves. The baby, Ava, Maya named her in her mind, unable to call her the infant anymore, was shivering, her cries now thin gasps, lips almost blue from the chill. Thunder shifted, placing his bulk more firmly between Ava and the brush where hungry eyes glinted. The coyotes were growing bolder. One, a rangy female with a torn ear, slunk forward, hoping the stallion would finally falter. Thunder's response was a blur of hooves and rage. He surged, teeth bared, letting out a shrill cry that cut through the canyon. The coyote bolted, tail tucked, the others scattering in her wake. For a moment, the threat receded, but Maya could see how much the effort cost him. He staggered, breathing ragged, sweat shining beneath the dust and dried blood. His eyes, wild and rolling, kept darting to Ava and then back to Maya, weighing threats, measuring trust. Animal Control Officer Teresa Ortiz rappelled down next, moving with practiced ease. She stopped 10 feet away, whispering, "Don't rush, he's hanging by a thread." Maya nodded, every nerve thrumming. He's protecting her like she's his own foal. Anything sudden, he'll fight us all. Teresa slipped her hand into her vest and drew out a horse treat, holding it palm up, never looking directly at Thunder. "Hey, big guy. It's all right. Nobody's taking your baby." Thunder sniffed the air, but his focus never wavered from Ava. Behind Maya, the medic was already prepping a thermal blanket and infant oxygen, eyeing the situation with growing alarm. "She's got to be hypothermic," he muttered. "Working on it," Maya replied. The next minutes stretched, tense as a drawn bow. Thunder's agitation spiked every time anyone moved, ears flattening, nostrils flaring. He lashed his tail, stamping hard enough to send loose stones skittering. The predators hadn't truly left, just waiting for the humans to mess up. Maya took a chance. She unhooked her jacket, inching forward until she was just a few feet from Thunder. "Look," she whispered, voice steady. "You're her shield. You did it. Let us help now." She crouched, slow and non-threatening, her hand outstretched. Thunder's head swung toward her, eyes wild. But there was a flicker. Recognition, maybe. Something softer. He didn't retreat. Didn't charge. Instead, he shuddered, breath rattling in his chest, and pawed the ground beside Ava, as if to urge Maya closer. The medic moved, hands sure and practiced. Teresa kept her body turned sideways. Horses read intention in every angle. "We're not here to take her from you, Thunder," she said. "Just want to help her breathe." Maya inched her jacket over the infant's body, careful not to touch Thunder's legs. The stallion lowered his nose, lips brushing the baby's cheek. For a heartbeat, Maya saw something achingly gentle, a memory flickering behind Thunder's eyes. Of a lost foal, perhaps. Or just an animal's universal urge to protect the smallest, weakest life in its care. Suddenly, the baby's cry returned, weak but insistent. Thunder jerked, nostrils flaring, but Maya's calm presence, her steady voice, kept him from panic. She remembered her training. Horses were all about body language. She looked down, never making eye contact, keeping her posture loose. Good boy. You've done enough." She eased a bottle of water toward him. Thunder sniffed it, then, astonishingly, drank. He was panting, too weak to resist the comfort. Maya used the moment to speak softly to Ava. "You're safe now, sweetheart. We've got you." The medic edged in, checking Ava's pulse, then slipping the oxygen mask over her tiny face. Thunder's ears flicked, but he only shifted enough to allow it. Teresa kept murmuring, her words a steady, soothing drone. Minutes passed like hours. Ava's color slowly returned, her body warming under the jacket and the rescue blanket. Thunder, having given everything, finally sagged, his massive frame shaking. He collapsed onto his knees, never taking his eyes off Ava. Above, more boots scraped rock. News was spreading. By now, more rescue, animal control, and park rangers were converging, drawn by the impossible scene. A wild stallion defending a human child from nature itself. A paramedic with a stretcher started down the final rope, radio blaring updates. "We've got cameras coming. They want footage. Miracle in the canyon." Maya shot him a glare. "No cameras until she's safe. Period." The team formed a loose semicircle, keeping a careful buffer from Thunder, who watched every move with wary eyes. Finally, after what felt like forever, Maya eased close enough to scoop Ava up, wrapping her in the thermal blanket, cradling her to her chest. Thunder tried to rise, muscles spasming, but Maya spoke fast and soft, hand out in reassurance. "It's okay, boy. I've got her. She's safe. You did this." Ava's fist tangled in Maya's collar, eyes wide and trusting. Maya felt something shatter inside. Admiration for the stallion's raw devotion. Grief for whatever he'd lost that made him care this much for a human baby. The team retreated, carrying Ava carefully up the slope. Thunder gave a strangled, desperate whinny, a sound that would haunt Maya's dreams. Teresa and Maya stayed behind, managing to loop a halter around Thunder's neck as he collapsed in the mud, all fight spent. Above, the world was waking to a miracle. Coyotes faded into the shadows, the birds of prey wheeled away, and for the first time in hours, the canyon was silent except for the sound of Maya whispering thanks to a wild horse who had done the impossible. Thunder closed his eyes, chest rising and falling. Maya pressed a gentle hand to his shoulder, promising, "We'll take care of her. And you, I swear it." As the sun rose higher, rescue teams moved Ava and Thunder towards safety, two survivors bound together by an act of pure, unthinkable heroism. The commotion at the canyon's edge was organized chaos. Voices shouting, radios squawking, paramedics clustering around the baby bundled in Maya's arms. Yet even with the adrenaline draining from her body, Maya's focus kept sliding back to the battered stallion left behind. Thunder's wild eyes followed every movement, as if he could somehow climb the sheer rock walls through willpower alone and reclaim the child he'd risked his life to protect. Ava was safe now, though her cries were faint and her skin cold to the touch. Medics rushed her into a waiting ambulance, already checking her vital signs and swaddling her in layers of warm blankets. Maya wanted to follow, but she forced herself to stay. Her job wasn't finished. Thunder's ordeal wasn't over either. Animal Control Officer Teresa approached, speaking softly. "He's in bad shape, Maya. Wounds on his hindquarters, dehydration, adrenaline crash. If we push him too hard now, he could hurt himself. Or us." Maya nodded, lips pressed tight. The morning sun was higher now, casting long shadows over the canyon. Thunder stood like a statue, chest heaving, sides flecked with blood and mud. The halter still hung loosely around his neck, a feeble link between wildness and the world of people. The paramedics and rangers kept their distance, respectful but wary. No one wanted to be the one who spooked Thunder into a last stand. Even the coyotes, sensing the balance had shifted, melted into the brush. Birds of prey circled above, but the drama below had ended, at least for them. Maya crouched a few yards from Thunder, water bottle in hand. She watched his ears, forward, then flat, then forward again. Caught between fear and exhaustion, her own voice was soft, every word measured. "Easy, Thunder. You're safe now. No one's taking her from you. You did what you had to do." She unscrewed the bottle cap, poured a little into her palm, and extended her hand. Thunder eyed her warily, nostrils quivering. He sniffed the air, but for several long moments, he didn't move. Every instinct in his body screamed for him to bolt, to vanish into the wild. But his legs were shaking, and the pain in his eyes told Maya he knew he couldn't run far. Teresa tried next, holding out a treat, an apple wedge, bright against the mud. "Come on, boy. Nobody's here to hurt you. Let's get you patched up, huh?" Thunder hesitated, the old memory of trust warring with the fresh sting of wounds and fear. Finally, he stretched his neck just far enough to lip the treat from Teresa's palm. His lips were cracked, his breath shallow. When he finished, he looked back at Maya as if to say, "What next?" Maya reached slowly for the halter, never breaking the rhythm of her voice. "We're going to get you out of here, Thunder. Get you somewhere warm, with clean water and a safe place to lie down. You're not alone anymore." It took nearly an hour of patient coaxing, inch by inch, before Thunder finally let Maya touch his mane. His muscles flinched under her fingers, but he didn't pull away. Instead, he dropped his head, weariness washing through his battered frame. Meanwhile, more rescue staff arrived. A wildlife veterinarian named Dr. Rosenthal began a preliminary exam right there on the canyon floor. Pulse is thready, temp is low, lacerations but nothing deep enough for stitches. Shock is the big danger. He needs fluids and rest, fast. As the team worked, Maya found herself talking to Thunder in the same steady, reassuring tone she'd used with her first rescue years ago. She told him about the quiet barn where he'd be safe, the endless fields of fresh grass, and the gentle hands waiting to help him heal. She told him about Ava, too, how she was going to be okay, how Thunder's courage had given her a second chance at life. By midday, a path had been cleared up the canyon, wide enough for a stretcher and a makeshift sling for Thunder. The process was delicate. Any sudden movement, and Thunder could panic, injure himself, or injure someone trying to help. The rescue team moved like a well-practiced dance. Soft voices, slow gestures, absolute patience. It was Maya, kneeling beside Thunder's massive head, who finally persuaded him to trust. She pressed her forehead lightly to his, breathing in his scent, dust, sweat, something wild and ancient. For a brief moment the world fell away, and it was just them, woman and horse, survivor and protector, both marked by pain but refusing to let go. Thunder allowed the sling to be fastened around his chest and belly, grunting softly as the rescue crew guided him up the incline. Maya walked alongside him, one hand always on his shoulder, talking him through every step. When they reached the top, a crowd had gathered. Neighbors, ranchers, hikers drawn by the sirens and the growing buzz on social media. Some gasped in awe. Others snapped photos, already streaming live to the world. Maya ignored them all, focusing on Thunder's trembling legs and the lost, haunted look in his eyes. A trailer was ready, lined with soft hay and flanked by more veterinarians. Maya and Teresa led Thunder up the ramp, pausing as he hesitated, nostrils flaring. Another gentle word, another soothing stroke, and he finally stepped inside, surrendering to care for the first time in what must have been years. The doors closed behind him. Maya felt a knot in her chest loosen, just a little. Across the field, the ambulance carrying Ava sped toward the nearest hospital. Maya called in, demanding updates every half hour. "She's stable," the nurse assured her. "Cold, dehydrated, but she's fighting. You got her out just in time." Thunder, too, began his long road to recovery. At the veterinary facility, Dr. Rosenthal administered fluids, tended wounds, and kept a steady eye on the stallion's vital signs. Thunder rested at last, flanks rising and falling, ears twitching whenever a human voice echoed through the barn. Maya visited him every day, documenting his progress for both the authorities and her own peace of mind. She noticed how Thunder perked up at the sound of a baby's cry, even if it was only a recording played on her phone. And in the hospital, Ava was restless, inconsolable, until a nurse on a hunch played a recording of Thunder's low, rumbling whinny. Almost immediately, the baby calmed, her tiny hand relaxing, her breathing evening out. There was something profound happening, an unspoken bond, a mystery that none of the professionals could explain. Thunder and Ava, both battered by a world that had abandoned them, had become each other's family in a way no one expected. And as the days passed, Maya found herself returning to that canyon in her mind. The echo of cries at dawn, the silhouette of a wild horse refusing to give up, and the realization that sometimes the hardest part of rescue isn't pulling someone from danger, but earning their trust enough that they're willing to be saved. The days after the canyon rescue unfolded like a patchwork of exhaustion, hope, and uncertainty. The world outside kept moving. Traffic buzzed, headlines changed, but in two separate places not so far apart, the survivors of Devil's Bend began their fight for recovery. Each was scarred, each haunted by the ordeal, and neither understood why their hearts seemed tethered by an invisible thread. At St. Anne's Hospital, Ava became the center of gentle chaos. Doctors diagnosed her with mild hypothermia and dehydration. Nurses clucked over her, carefully monitoring every vital sign, murmuring comfort as they checked for injuries and called in specialists to examine her trembling limbs. She was the smallest patient in the pediatric ward, a bundle of dark hair, wide eyes, and bruised silence. She had no name in the hospital records yet, just Baby Jane Doe. But to Maya, she was Ava, survivor of the canyon, keeper of a wild stallion's trust. Ava's first hours were marked by uncertainty. Her body was safe, warmed by heated blankets, but her spirit floated in distress. She cried out, a thin, raw sound that never seemed to fully subside, even when cradled or rocked. Doctors ruled out physical pain. Nurses tried bottles, lullabies, stuffed animals, and warm hands. Still, Ava stared at the fluorescent lights and the unfamiliar ceiling, tiny fists clenched in search of comfort. Across town, Thunder's recovery was both similar and utterly different. The veterinary clinic on the outskirts of town was accustomed to treating ranch horses, but never had it hosted a patient with this much attention, or this much mystery. Dr. Rosenthal supervised every detail. Thunder's wounds were cleaned and dressed. IV fluids slowly replenished his strength, and sedatives calmed his rattled nerves. The barn was quiet, the stalls freshly bedded, and staff tiptoed around him as if in the presence of something sacred. Yet Thunder was restless. He shunned most human touch, except for Maya and Teresa, who visited every day. He barely ate at first, nipping at hay only when the room was silent and still. His sleep was troubled, haunted by dreams that left him snorting and pacing before dawn. He kept one ear cocked toward any distant sound, as if listening for a cry that only he could recognize. Maya noticed it first, the strange, immediate shift in Thunder's posture whenever she played back a short, grainy recording from her phone. It was just a few seconds long. Ava's first cries after her rescue, echoing from the canyon walls. The moment Maya pressed play, Thunder's head snapped up. His eyes, usually clouded and wary, sharpened with recognition. He would pace, snort, and, most tellingly, let out a low, thunderous whinny, a sound that vibrated with longing and frustration. The veterinarians were astonished. "He recognizes her," Dr. Rosenthal murmured, watching as Thunder's agitation melted into stillness whenever he heard the recording. That's almost unheard of. Maya's visits to the hospital were marked by a different sort of experiment. One night, she noticed how Ava's cries would climb in pitch whenever a nurse drew near with a bottle or stethoscope. Desperate, Maya tried playing the audio she'd recorded of Thunder, a deep, rolling whinny that echoed with strength. Within moments, Ava's breathing steadied, her tiny hand unclenched, her eyelids fluttered, and for the first time her cries faded into soft hiccups. The nurses took note. She's soothed by that sound, like she knows it's safe. Soon, Thunder's whinny became a standard part of Ava's daily care. When the crying grew sharpest, during IV changes or after nightmares, they played the audio, and calm would settle over the infant like a soft blanket. Maya felt the awe and relief like a balm for her own soul. It was a miracle, one born from pain and wildness, and now woven into their every attempt to heal. Media attention exploded as stories of the Canyon miracle spread across local news, then national headlines. Maya gave careful interviews, describing Thunder's bravery and the mystery of the baby's abandonment. The hospital and veterinary clinic set up joint press releases. Donations began pouring in: blankets for Ava, specialty feeds for Thunder, offers of foster care, and even adoption. Some called for Thunder's permanent release into the wild. Others said he belonged in a sanctuary, a living legend to inspire compassion. But amid all the outside noise, the deepest drama unfolded in quiet moments. At the clinic, Maya documented Thunder's gradual recovery. She filled a notebook with daily observations: the first time Thunder nuzzled her hand, the day he accepted a carrot from a child visitor, the night he finally lay down and slept for more than an hour. She watched his wounds heal, his ribs slowly fill out, and his eyes soften just a little at the sound of her voice. At the hospital, Maya marveled as Ava learned to trust again. A nurse discovered that a soft, stuffed black horse would calm her when nothing else worked. Ava clung to it, pressing her cheek to its fuzzy mane, eyes closing in exhaustion. Physical therapists taught her to grip their fingers, to stretch and flex, and every tiny milestone felt like a triumph for the whole floor. A bond was forming, one that defied explanation, rooted in shared trauma and something deeper still. Both Thunder and Ava grew stronger, but each showed signs of longing, a restless ache that neither medicine nor kindness could erase. Thunder paced his stall at dusk, pausing to gaze toward the distant hills, ears pricked for a voice only he seemed able to hear. Ava's sleep was troubled, broken by dreams that left her reaching out for comfort that even Maya sometimes struggled to give. Late one evening, Maya sat by Thunder's stall, her back against the rough wood, staring into the deepening twilight. Teresa joined her, offering a cup of instant coffee and a rare, tired smile. "Never seen anything like it," Teresa said softly. "It's like they're two halves of the same soul." "I've been around horses my whole life, Maya. Never seen a wild one act this way over a human child." Maya nodded, her gaze distant. "It's not just him, Teresa. Ava, she won't settle unless she hears him, feels that connection. It's like they're both lost without each other." Teresa shook her head, wonder in her eyes. "Maybe we shouldn't keep them apart any longer. Maybe what they need to heal is each other." As summer rolled in, bringing longer days and warmer nights, Maya found herself haunted by the same thought. Thunder and Ava had survived the canyon by clinging to each other in the wild, facing down nature itself. Now, separated by glass and concrete, their wounds seemed slower to heal. Maya made her decision. The next morning she gathered her notes, her heart pounding with both hope and uncertainty, and asked to meet with the hospital's head pediatrician and the head of animal control. She outlined her theory, showing them the data, the video evidence, the heart rate charts, the staff observations. She argued that the key to recovery for both child and Stallion might just be a reunion. The doctors and administrators hesitated, citing risk and liability. But Maya was persistent. "They saved each other out there," she pleaded. "Let's give them the chance to finish what they started." Slowly, the professionals were won over. Plans began to form. A supervised visit, under the watchful eyes of doctors, veterinarians, and animal experts. It would be risky, unprecedented, and controversial. But for Maya, and for everyone who had witnessed the bond between Thunder and Ava, it was the only choice that made sense. And as Thunder stood at his stall window that evening, staring out at the stars, and Ava drifted to sleep to the sound of a stallion's whinny played softly through a hospital speaker, hope flickered. A fragile, stubborn thing that refused to die. By the end of that first week, Thunder and Ava's story had moved far beyond the canyon. The news, first a spark on local television, grew into a wildfire sweeping across national networks and social media feeds. Morning shows debated the meaning of heroism. Parenting forums gushed about the miracle bond between horse and child. And people from all over the country called to offer prayers, donations, and even adoption inquiries. In the small Colorado town nearest Devil's Bend, the hospital and veterinary clinic overflowed with flowers, care packages, and letters. Some for Ava, others for the guardian of the canyon. But while the world watched, a more urgent drama was unfolding behind the scenes. The search for Ava's family, and the fight to keep Thunder and Ava together, if only for a brief, healing moment. Maya became the public face of both efforts. Each morning she stood outside the veterinary barn, answering questions from reporters who set up tripods near the paddock. Cameras followed her as she fed Thunder, his black coat slowly regaining its shine, his wounds healing better than anyone expected. Some journalists came with tough questions. Who would care for Ava if no family was found? Was it safe to let a wild horse near a child? Was the story too good to be true? Maya answered every question with steady honesty and a quiet resolve, her own conviction growing with each retelling of Thunder's courage. The community responded in ways that amazed even the most seasoned officials. Local businesses put out donation jars, ranchers offered feed and supplies, and the elementary school hosted a hero horse art contest to help raise funds for the hospital's pediatric ward and Thunder's veterinary care. Crowdfunding campaigns sprung up online, the totals ticking upward with every news segment or viral clip of Thunder gently nuzzling a blanket that still carried Ava's scent. The town's pastor stopped Maya on Main Street, pressing a small envelope into her hand. "For the baby, and for the horse who protected her," he said softly. Maya's eyes stung. She pocketed the money, knowing it would help, but wishing more than anything for answers to the bigger questions. The social workers and police detectives assigned to Ava's case worked around the clock. At first, the leads were thin. A child with no ID, left in a remote canyon. No missing persons report matching her description. Authorities fanned out across the region, checking with neighboring towns, campgrounds, ranches, and foster care databases. They ran interviews with hikers and hunters who'd been in Devil's Bend in the past month. And they combed through security footage from every highway and gas station for miles. The public, galvanized by Thunder's story, became part of the search. People flooded tip lines with stories of women seen crying at campgrounds, cars abandoned near trailheads, a lost baby's blanket found at a rest stop. There were false alarms and dead ends, but still the authorities pressed forward, unwilling to let the trail grow cold. Meanwhile, Maya lobbied tirelessly for Thunder and Ava's reunion. She met with doctors, animal experts, and child welfare officials, presenting them with video clips and research on animal-assisted therapy and the mysterious ways trauma bonds could heal both human and animal. "She needs him," Maya insisted during a tense hospital meeting. "And I believe he needs her too. Every day apart, I see them both slipping backwards." The hospital staff, once skeptical, gradually shifted their thinking. Nurses who'd watched Ava wail for hours only to settle when Thunder's whinny played over a speaker became some of Maya's strongest allies. The chief pediatrician called in a trauma specialist who reviewed the evidence and finally agreed. If it can be done safely, the emotional benefit could be profound. While arrangements for the visit moved forward, the search for Ava's family found a glimmer of hope. A battered sedan was discovered at a remote pull-off near the canyon, its plates traced to a woman named Rosa Alvarez, who had recently lost her job and, neighbors said, had been struggling alone. A local social worker recognized the name from past cases involving mental health support and family counseling. Detectives dug deeper, piecing together Rosa's recent days, receipts from a grocery store, a motel check-in under a false name, interviews with staff at a food pantry. Each clue suggested a woman in crisis, moving through the world in a state of panic and fear. A missing persons bulletin went out with Rosa's photo, and the media appeal reached farther. Soon, a motel clerk on the outskirts of Denver called in, recalling a disheveled woman who'd asked after a baby Ava just days earlier. The investigation intensified, with hopes rising that answers were finally within reach. Throughout all this, the pressure on Maya grew. Some in the community questioned the wisdom of letting a wild stallion near a vulnerable child. Others, especially those who'd seen the two together, argued passionately in favor of their reunion. The online crowdfunding page for Thunder and Ava's care surpassed $80,000, with donors from as far away as Maine and Hawaii. Messages of support poured in, from war veterans who'd experienced animal therapy, from mothers who knew the pain of postpartum depression, and from children who simply wanted to say thank you to the horse who'd saved a baby. On the day the first supervised visit was finally approved, the hospital was abuzz with nervous energy. News vans lined the street, their satellite dishes pointed skyward. Inside, Maya stood with the hospital's head pediatrician, a team of nurses, and animal experts from the local university. Thunder waited in a quiet paddock outside, his coat brushed, his halter gleaming, eyes fixed on the door where Maya would appear. As preparations went on, Maya's phone buzzed with an update. Rosa Alvarez had been found, alive but distraught, in a shelter outside the city. She was safe and in custody, ready to be questioned about Ava. The caseworker's voice was gentle. "She's fragile, Maya, not a criminal, just someone lost." Maya hung up, her heart heavy with the knowledge that the story's next chapter would not be simple. But as she gathered Ava in her arms, feeling the child's small body tremble with anticipation and fear, Maya let herself believe that healing was possible. Not just for Ava or Thunder, but for everyone who'd been touched by the miracle in the canyon. A hush fell as Maya carried Ava toward the paddock for the first time. Reporters watched from behind the fence, their cameras forgotten. Thunder's ears pricked, his body tense but hopeful. Ava's face pressed into Maya's shoulder, her eyes wide and searching. As the gate opened and the two saw each other, time seemed to slow. Thunder took a hesitant step forward, then another, nostrils flaring. Maya knelt in the grass, cradling Ava as the stallion approached. Ava's hand reached out, tiny fingers curling in the air. Thunder lowered his head, breath warm and soft on the child's skin. The world watched, holding its breath, as the impossible bond that had begun in terror and darkness became a beacon of hope, a symbol of all that could be healed, if only given the chance. And in that moment, Maya understood. Sometimes family is not just about blood or birth, but about the courage to protect, the strength to forgive, and the miracle of second chances. For days, the staff at both the hospital and the veterinary clinic prepared for the moment when Thunder and Ava would finally see each other again. It was a carefully orchestrated event, planned down to every detail, with safety protocols for both child and animal, as well as medical supervision on standby. Still, everyone felt the quiet thrum of anxiety underneath. What if it didn't work? What if the bond people spoke of was only wishful thinking, a projection of hope onto a wild horse and a traumatized baby. But on the morning of the reunion, optimism outshone every doubt. Sunlight poured through the wide windows of the rehabilitation paddock, where the grass was green and soft, and the air held the freshness of summer. The space had been cleared, with fencing high enough to keep Thunder contained, but low enough for Ava to see his face. Veterinarians and pediatric nurses lined the perimeter, while a small crowd of press and townsfolk watched from a respectful distance, straining to catch a glimpse of the scene about to unfold. Maya stood by the paddock gate, her heart pounding as she cradled Ava in her arms. The little girl had grown stronger since her ordeal, though her eyes still darted anxiously to every new face. Today, Ava wore a simple pink onesie and a knitted hat, gifts from the town's residents. She clutched a plush black horse, the toy's mane already worn smooth from countless hours of comfort. Thunder, for his part, was equally transformed. His coat gleamed, his wounds were healing, and there was a growing steadiness in his eyes. But the moment Maya and Ava appeared at the edge of the paddock, something in Thunder shifted. His head shot up. He let out a deep, rolling whinny, loud enough that even the crowd gasped. His ears pricked forward, and he took a few uncertain steps closer, as if unable to believe that what he was seeing was real. Maya glanced at the head veterinarian, who gave a cautious nod. She stepped inside the paddock, her steps slow and deliberate. The gate closed behind her, a soft clang that made Ava jump. Maya whispered reassurances, rubbing the child's back, then knelt in the grass, facing Thunder. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The world seemed to hold its breath. Thunder's nostrils flared, drinking in Ava's scent. The stallion took another step, and then another, moving with a gentleness that none of the onlookers had ever witnessed from such a powerful animal. Maya kept her voice soft. "It's okay, Thunder. She's here, she's safe. You can come closer." Ava's tiny hand reached out, almost instinctively. At that moment, Thunder dropped his great black head and gently nuzzled her fingers. A sound escaped Ava, not a cry, but a laugh, small and surprised. Her whole body relaxed in Maya's arms. It was as if a storm that had raged inside her had suddenly stilled. The entire paddock was silent. The veterinarians exchanged glances, awed, a little teary. One of the nurses pressed a hand to her mouth. A camera clicked, but nobody spoke, unwilling to shatter the fragile magic of that moment. Thunder stood close, his body tense but calm. He sniffed Ava's hair, then her face, his breath warm against her skin. The stallion's eyes, so often wary and wild, were soft, reflecting something ancient and gentle. Maya, barely breathing, let Ava sit in the grass, always keeping one steady hand on the child's back. Thunder lay down beside them, folding his legs awkwardly, still careful not to frighten the child. Ava let go of Maya's shirt and pressed her hand against Thunder's muzzle. The big horse closed his eyes, letting out a sigh so deep it seemed to empty the world of worry. In that instant, a hush of peace settled on everyone watching. It was impossible not to believe in miracles. Over the next hour, doctors and veterinarians watched closely for any sign of distress in either child or horse. But what they saw was healing, real and immediate. Ava giggled, her voice stronger than it had been in days. She crawled clumsily across the grass, Thunder's head following her every move, his tail swishing contentedly. When Ava tripped and started to cry, Thunder nudged her back onto her feet with the gentlest bump of his nose. Maya laughed, tears stinging her eyes, and let herself hope for the first time since the rescue. Outside the paddock, the world watched in awe. A short video of Thunder and Ava's reunion, taken on a nurse's phone, was posted online that afternoon. Within hours, it had been viewed by millions. Comments poured in from every corner of the globe, people sharing their own stories of animal bonds, mental health struggles, and the longing for a world where compassion could triumph over trauma. Donations spiked again. The crowdfunding page now included messages not just of financial support, but letters, poems, and drawings from children across the country. One little boy from Ohio sent a letter. "Dear Thunder, you are my hero. If I am ever scared, I will think of you and be brave." The sanctuary's mailbox overflowed with cards, most addressed to Thunder and Ava, some to Maya, all carrying the weight of collective hope. The professionals overseeing Ava's care were astonished at the change. Before the reunion, Ava's nightmares had been frequent and severe. She'd wake up crying, inconsolable, her body rigid with fear. After spending time with Thunder, those episodes lessened. She began sleeping longer, smiling more. Nurses reported that she reached for her food and toys with new confidence, and that she laughed, truly laughed, whenever someone played a video of Thunder's whinny. Thunder, too, began to thrive. His appetite returned, his coat regained its luster, and he allowed the veterinarians to treat his wounds without fear. He seemed content in his new surroundings, especially after Ava's visits became a regular part of his days. Thunder would stand by the paddock gate each morning, ears pricked for the sound of a child's laughter. When Ava arrived, he'd trot over to greet her, his body language relaxed and joyful. The bond that began in crisis had now become a source of healing for both. The press marveled at the science behind such a connection, interviewing animal behaviorists, trauma therapists, and equine specialists. Explanations varied. Some cited the unique ability of horses to sense emotional distress. Others pointed to studies on the healing power of touch and companionship. But for Maya and everyone who witnessed it firsthand, the answer was simpler. When two souls survive the impossible together, they become each other's home. As summer deepened, Thunder and Ava's visits became more frequent. Their reunion was not just a spectacle for the media, but a testament to the resilience of the wounded, the strength of compassion, and the unspoken language of hope. For Maya, watching the two together, it was a reminder that healing is rarely a straight line. It is a path marked by setbacks, courage, and sometimes unexpected guardians. And as the sun set over the sanctuary, casting golden light across the paddock, Maya knew that Thunder and Ava's story was not just about survival, but about the enduring power of connection and the possibility of starting anew. Even as the world cheered the miraculous bond between Thunder and Ava, the story's heart remained unfinished. The authorities' search for Ava's family continued, tracing leads and lingering questions across Colorado's sunburned highways and lonely mountain towns. The battered sedan, the shelter intake forms, the sightings of a distraught young woman. Every clue pointed to Rosa Alvarez, a mother lost in the labyrinth of fear, regret, and desperation. For Maya, those days were heavy with anticipation. The reunions between Thunder and Ava were healing them both, and the sanctuary's grounds had become a place of cautious optimism. Yet Maya knew, deep down, that true closure for Ava, and perhaps for Thunder too, required facing the tangled reality of what had happened in the canyon. Every night, as she walked past the now legendary paddock where Thunder waited by the fence, Maya wondered about the woman whose choices had set all of this in motion. It was a cloudy morning when the call came in. Rosa Alvarez had been found. She was at a women's shelter outside Denver, physically unharmed but emotionally frail, her days spent in silence and her nights haunted by the memory of her daughter's cries. The caseworker spoke quietly. She's not running. She's broken. She's ready to talk. The news hit Maya with a mix of dread and hope. Arrangements were made for Rosa to come to the sanctuary under supervision, escorted by social workers and a trauma counselor. The press was kept at bay. This was not a story for the cameras, but a moment that demanded compassion and care. The staff gathered anxiously, some struggling to contain their anger, others holding out hope for some kind of redemption. Thunder paced his paddock, restless and watchful, his keen senses attuned to the tension humming through the sanctuary. When Rosa arrived, she looked nothing like the headlines. She was young, barely in her 20s, with sunken eyes and trembling hands, her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail as if to hide behind it. She wore borrowed clothes, her shoes scuffed and thin. Maya watched her step from the car, shoulders hunched, every line of her body screaming guilt and sorrow. Inside the sanctuary's small office, Rosa sat with the caseworker and counselor, her voice barely above a whisper. She described the days leading up to that desperate moment, the mounting isolation, the sleepless nights, the shame and panic that seemed to close in from every side. She spoke of postpartum depression, of waking up in terror, convinced she couldn't keep Ava safe, haunted by the belief that she was failing at motherhood. I thought, maybe if someone found her, she'd be better off. I was so scared, she sobbed, words spilling out in a torrent of pain and regret. The officials listened quietly, some with skepticism, others with empathy. Maya, standing nearby, felt her own heart twist. It would have been easy to judge, to let anger take over. But looking at Rosa, Maya saw the face of someone drowning. Not a monster, but a young woman overwhelmed by fear, left alone with burdens no one should carry without support. The decision to allow Rosa to see Ava was not made lightly. Doctors and social workers debated, weighing Ava's safety against the healing that could come from reunion. In the end, the trauma counselor, herself a survivor of postpartum depression, argued for compassion. We have an opportunity here, let's do it right. Let's show her support and accountability can coexist. Maya volunteered to facilitate the visit, carefully planning every detail. Ava would be brought to a private garden on the sanctuary grounds, a space filled with flowers, shaded benches, and the gentle scent of hay on the breeze. Thunder would be close by, inside the paddock, his presence both comfort and safeguard. If at any point Ava showed distress, the visit would end. Rosa agreed to all conditions, tears shining in her eyes. The day of the reunion dawned with a nervous hush. Maya dressed Ava in a fresh onesie, soft and clean, and tucked the familiar black plush horse into her arms. As they walked to the garden, Ava clung to Maya's shoulder, eyes searching for Thunder's familiar shape. He was there, of course, waiting by the fence, his ears pricked and his stance protective. Rosa sat on a bench, hands clenched, breath quick and shallow. Maya approached first, speaking softly. "Rosa, this is Ava. She's safe, she's strong, and she's been so brave." Rosa's eyes filled with tears as she took in her daughter's face. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, baby." Her voice broke. She reached out, hesitated, then drew her hand back, afraid to touch. Maya knelt beside Ava, letting the child set the pace. Ava stared at Rosa with the wary curiosity of a child too young to understand betrayal, but too wise to forget fear. The first minutes were quiet, heavy with uncertainty. Rosa sobbed, her words tumbling out. Apologies, confessions, promises she barely dared to make. She explained her panic, the spiral of isolation, the way every cry from Ava had felt like proof she was unfit to be a mother. She admitted she'd made a terrible mistake, but insisted she had never wanted to hurt her child. "I wanted her to live, even if it wasn't with me," she whispered. Maya watched Thunder during the reunion. The stallion stood at the fence, head low, eyes locked on Rosa. He was tense, but not aggressive, a sentinel, not a judge. He seemed to sense Rosa's turmoil, responding not with fear or anger, but with a wary sort of empathy. At one point, Ava began to fuss, overwhelmed by the unfamiliar voice and emotion. Thunder let out a soft whinny, drawing her attention, and Ava immediately calmed, crawling to the fence and pressing her hand against the boards. Rosa watched in awe, wiping her tears, as Thunder lowered his great head and nuzzled Ava's fingers with infinite gentleness. After a while, Maya brought Rosa closer to the fence. "Thunder is her guardian now. But you're her mother," she said quietly. "If you want a chance to rebuild that trust, it starts with honesty and with help." The trauma counselor stepped in, guiding Rosa through breathing exercises, helping her share memories of happier times with Ava. Her first smile, her first giggle, the way she would reach for her mother's hair when scared. The air shifted from sorrow to something lighter, a cautious hope. Rosa began to smile through her tears, and Ava watched, sensing the change. The visit ended with a promise. Rosa would enter an intensive support program, counseling, parenting classes, and ongoing supervision. The social workers would monitor her progress, and the court would decide Ava's future based on what they saw. Rosa didn't fight it. "I want to do what's right, for her, for me, for all of us." She knelt by the fence, whispering a final apology, and pressed her hand beside Ava's against the wood. Thunder stood between them, neither threatened nor threatening, a silent witness to the fragile beginning of forgiveness. That night, as the sanctuary settled into dusk, Maya stood by Thunder's paddock and watched Ava sleep, her small chest rising and falling in peaceful rhythm. Rosa's fate remained uncertain, but hope had returned. The road ahead would be long, marked by accountability and hard-won healing. But as Thunder stood guard under the starlit sky, Maya knew that sometimes the bravest thing of all was to ask for help, and to give it when it was needed most. By the end of summer, the sanctuary had transformed from a modest rescue facility into something much larger, a living symbol of what a community could become when it chose hope over despair, connection over isolation. The events in Devil's Bend had united people who might never have crossed paths otherwise. Ranchers, city dwellers, social workers, animal lovers, and families touched by hardship all found themselves invested in the story of Thunder, Ava, and Rosa. The crowdfunding campaign had grown beyond anyone's imagination. Donations poured in, not only from within Colorado, but from across the country. Checks, letters, and even boxes of children's books, art supplies, and horse feed. Local construction crews volunteered their weekends. Architects donated blueprints for new barns, classrooms, and therapy rooms. Volunteers of all ages signed up, eager to help build something lasting from the ashes of heartbreak. Maya watched in awe as the old paddocks were expanded and new trails cut through wildflower fields. A state-of-the-art veterinary clinic rose on one end of the property, while shaded play areas for children took shape near the central barn. There was a peace garden planted with native grasses and bright yellow sunflowers, and a quiet room lined with books, beanbags, and the soft whicker of horses just outside the windows. The sanctuary became a place where wounds, physical, emotional, and otherwise, could begin to heal. The heart of the sanctuary was still Thunder and Ava. The Stallion, now the star attraction, roamed a broad pasture with a handful of other rescue horses. He greeted visitors at the fence with gentle curiosity, his eyes alert for Maya, Ava, and, now increasingly, Rosa. Ava had become his shadow, toddling through the grass in rubber boots and a sun hat, her giggle carrying across the fields. Maya made sure to schedule time every day for Ava and Thunder to be together under close supervision, often with Rosa sitting quietly nearby. Rosa's journey was far from over, but for the first time in months, she was surrounded by support. She threw herself into the sanctuary's work, volunteering for every job that needed doing. She mucked stalls, painted fences, and, eventually, began to help run the children's animal therapy programs, sharing her story with an honesty that broke down walls between strangers. With guidance from her counselors, Rosa joined group therapy sessions for mothers dealing with postpartum depression and mental health challenges. She spoke about her lowest moments, not to excuse them, but to show others that recovery was possible, that asking for help was a sign of strength, not weakness. The sanctuary quickly became more than a place for horses and abandoned children. It was a haven for anyone in crisis. Word spread about the innovative programs: equine-assisted therapy for veterans with PTSD, grief groups for widows, after-school care for children whose parents were struggling. The community center hosted workshops on mental health, addiction, parenting, and animal welfare. Every week, new faces arrived, sometimes cautious, sometimes desperate, but always met with welcome and understanding. Maya watched the changes with pride and humility. She remembered the fear and uncertainty of that dawn in Devil's Bend, when all she had was a rope, a radio, and her training. Now she had a team, a sanctuary, and a story that seemed to draw out the best in everyone who touched it. She worked long hours, splitting her time between wildlife duties and the sanctuary's endless demands. Whenever she felt doubt, she'd step out to the main pasture and find Thunder standing beside Ava, the two of them gazing at the sky as if they shared some secret language. Their bond reminded her why all of this mattered. Rosa's presence was both inspiration and cautionary tale. She was open about her struggles, never shying away from accountability. "I will always have to live with my choices," she said one afternoon, sitting in the sanctuary garden while children brushed ponies nearby. "But every day I get to be part of this place. I get another chance to do right by my daughter, by myself, and by all of you." Her willingness to share her pain and growth helped destigmatize conversations about mental health, especially among young mothers and struggling families. Over time, Rosa began to lead outreach efforts, visiting local schools and churches to speak about the importance of recognizing signs of postpartum crisis and offering practical help to families in need. She worked closely with Maya to design workshops that brought together social services and animal rescue, demonstrating how the bond between people and animals could serve as a bridge to healing. The sanctuary's open-door policy meant no one had to hide their pain or their past. The children who came to the sanctuary were the most changed. Many arrived withdrawn, sullen, or acting out, burdened by losses and traumas they didn't yet have words for. But in the company of horses, especially Thunder, they learned to trust again. Ava, once the smallest and most fragile, became the unofficial ambassador of the sanctuary. She would reach out to shy newcomers, pressing a favorite toy into their hands, inviting them to walk with her to the fence and meet Thunder. The Stallion seemed to understand, greeting each new child with patience and a gentle nudge. One autumn day, Maya found herself watching as Rosa led a group of parents through the sanctuary grounds, sharing her story as Ava toddled alongside. Thunder watched the procession, his black coat shining in the golden light. Maya felt a deep, quiet pride at the sight, not just for the physical sanctuary, but for the community it had created. That evening, as the last visitors left and the sanctuary quieted, Rosa joined Maya on the porch outside the main office. They sat side by side, sipping tea and listening to the distant sounds of horses settling down for the night. "I used to think my life was ruined," Rosa said quietly. "But I see now. It was just unfinished. Thank you for giving us all a place to start again." Maya reached out and squeezed her hand. "You're the reason we built this place. Thunder and Ava, they started it. But you showed us how to keep it going." The sanctuary thrived, not because it erased the pain of the past, but because it embraced it, turning suffering into service and regret into resolve. It became a model for others, a place where children, parents, animals, and anyone in need could find compassion, healing, and a second chance. And so, with each sunrise over the Colorado hills, the sanctuary's work continued, a living reminder that the greatest miracles are often the ones we build together, piece by piece, day by day, out of the ashes of loss and the steady light of hope. As the golden light of autumn settled over the sanctuary, it became clear that Thunder, Ava, and Rosa's story was more than a miracle. It was a living lesson. Word of the sanctuary's work had spread beyond Colorado, drawing visitors, journalists, educators, and therapists from across the country. Some arrived in hope, some in pain, and some simply out of curiosity, all united by a desire to witness the unlikely bond that had inspired so many. Maya found herself at the center of this whirlwind, stepping into roles she had never imagined. She became not only the sanctuary's director, but also its chief storyteller, advocate, and unofficial teacher. Local schools invited her to speak at assemblies. Community centers asked her to run workshops. Even regional conferences on trauma and animal welfare sent requests for Thunder's story to be told. At first, Maya was nervous, her voice trembling, her hands fidgeting as she stood before classrooms full of children or auditoriums packed with adults. But every time she spoke, she saw the same reaction: wide-eyed wonder, then thoughtful silence, and finally, hands raised with questions. She always began her talks the same way, her words simple but direct. Family isn't just who you're born to. It's who stands with you when you're at your most lost. Sometimes family is a wild stallion. Sometimes it's a nurse, or a stranger, or a community that refuses to let you fall through the cracks. Maya shared the story of Thunder's courage, Ava's survival, and Rosa's fight for redemption. But she went further. She spoke of how the sanctuary had taught her to see beyond surface judgments, to understand that pain, fear, and even abandonment didn't have to be the end of anyone's story. In one memorable school visit, a young boy asked, "Do you think Thunder loves Ava like people love their family?" Maya smiled. "I do," she replied. "Love isn't always about words. Sometimes it's about showing up, protecting each other, and being brave enough to trust again." The sanctuary quickly became a hub for community outreach. Maya worked closely with social workers, teachers, and therapists to build programs that connected at-risk families and struggling kids with the healing power of animals. Thunder's story became a case study in university classrooms, students discussing the science behind animal-assisted therapy, debating the mysteries of cross-species empathy, and drawing connections between human trauma and animal resilience. Volunteers came from all over, eager to help, to learn, and to bring those lessons back to their own communities. One of Maya's proudest accomplishments was the launch of a weekly family support group at the sanctuary. Parents, foster kids, veterans, single mothers, and grandparents raising grandchildren gathered in the warmth of the barn's community room. They shared stories, fears, and hopes over hot chocolate and homemade cookies, while Thunder and other rescue horses grazed outside the windows. Some families brought children, who had stopped speaking after a trauma. Many of them found their voices again after just a few visits, encouraged by the gentle presence of the animals and the unconditional welcome they received. Maya made a point of inviting Rosa to speak at these gatherings. Rosa never sugarcoated her story. She admitted to her failures, spoke honestly about postpartum depression, and encouraged others to seek help before their fear overwhelmed them. "We all need help sometimes," she told a room full of nervous, struggling parents. "There is no shame in admitting it. Thunder saved Ava, but this place saved me." Thunder himself became a symbol of resilience for many. Therapy programs used his story to teach children about bravery, patience, and second chances. Art therapists brought children with social anxiety or trauma out to the paddock, letting them brush Thunder's mane or simply sit quietly in his shadow until they felt safe enough to talk. One little girl, silent for weeks after losing her father, finally spoke while feeding Thunder carrots. "He didn't let the bad things win. I don't have to either." Even the staff at the sanctuary found themselves changed. Volunteers who had once seen their work as simple animal care now spoke passionately about the importance of connection, empathy, and community. One teenage volunteer, once considered a troublemaker at school, was inspired by Thunder's story to pursue veterinary studies. Another, a retired teacher, started a literacy program in the barn for children who struggled in traditional classrooms. As fall deepened, Maya was asked to give a talk at a regional therapy conference. She stood before a crowd of clinicians and researchers, her palms sweaty, and told them the unvarnished truth. "We don't always get to choose our families, but we do get to choose how we show up for each other." Thunder didn't owe Ava anything, but he risked everything for her. That's what real family is: protection, care, and forgiveness, especially when it's hard. After her talk, several therapists approached Maya, asking if they could use Thunder's story in their work. One woman confided that she'd struggled for years to reach a foster child who'd been through multiple placements, but after showing the child a video of Thunder and Ava's reunion, the child began to open up, saying, "Maybe someone could love me like that horse loved the baby." The sanctuary's reputation spread. Animal shelters and child welfare agencies from other states reached out for advice. Maya helped launch a mentorship network, sharing best practices for animal-assisted healing, trauma-informed care, and building trust with families in crisis. News articles followed, this time not just about a miracle rescue, but about lasting change, community building, and the lessons learned in the shadow of the canyon. Thunder's story also inspired changes in local policy. The town council, moved by the sanctuary's impact, established a small grant to help other local organizations support families in need, animal rescues, and mental health outreach. The sheriff's office began training officers in crisis intervention, using Thunder and Ava's case as a model for compassionate response. Maya's favorite part of every week remained her walks through the sanctuary at dusk. She'd often find Thunder and Ava side by side, the child's laughter echoing as she toddled after the Stallion, Rosa watching nearby, and volunteers sharing stories by the paddock fence. Sometimes Maya would stop and join them, her own burdens eased by the sense of belonging she'd helped create. And whenever a visitor asked what the secret was, how a wild horse, an abandoned child, and a lost mother could find healing together, Maya would answer with a gentle smile, "It's simple. We decided not to give up on each other. That's all any family really is." In the barn, a new mural was painted, showing Thunder standing guard over Ava, with Rosa and Maya in the background, hands joined. Underneath it, a single phrase in bold letters, "Family is who comes for you in the dark." As the sanctuary's lights glowed warmly against the Colorado night, Maya knew their story would ripple outward, giving others the courage to protect, to forgive and to love, no matter the odds, no matter the differences between us. Time moved forward, as it always does, yet the sanctuary at the edge of Devil's Bend seemed touched by something timeless. Autumn faded into winter, and the Colorado hills grew pale with snow. Yet inside the sanctuary's fences, the pulse of life and hope beat stronger than ever, each day a testament to how the wild courage of a single animal, the trust of a child, and the second chance given to a mother could echo far beyond their own story. Thunder's legend grew. No longer just a local hero, he became a symbol of hope across the country. His face appeared on murals, in children's books, and in the stories people told each other on cold evenings. At the sanctuary, he remained the heart and soul, a living reminder that miracles could happen not through magic, but through steadfast loyalty, empathy, and action in the face of fear. Ava grew stronger with each passing season. Once a silent bundle wrapped in a pink blanket, she was now a bright, curious child who ran across the pasture on chubby legs, her laughter ringing through the crisp mountain air. She followed Thunder everywhere, her little boots pressing trails in the snow beside his hoofprints. Whenever she stumbled or cried, Thunder was there, a gentle nudge, a reassuring presence. Theirs was a bond that defied logic and inspired everyone who witnessed it. Rosa, too, had become something new. No longer defined by a single desperate act, she worked every day to be worthy of her daughter's trust. She spoke honestly at support groups, reaching out to mothers on the edge, and led by example in her commitment to both accountability and compassion. With help from her counselors and Maya's steady friendship, Rosa built a life of service, helping others find the support she once lacked, and proving that no one is beyond redemption if given the chance to heal. Maya watched all this with quiet pride and a sense of awe. She never claimed credit for the changes that had blossomed since that fateful dawn in the canyon, but the community knew better. It was Maya's refusal to give up on Thunder, on Ava, and on Rosa that had woven the thread of hope running through the sanctuary's heart. As winter turned to spring, the sanctuary expanded its reach. The original rescue barn was now joined by new facilities, classrooms, family apartments, a retreat center for people recovering from trauma. A new team of crisis intervention counselors was trained, drawing on lessons learned from Thunder's story. Police, social workers, and animal rescue agencies worked together in ways they never had before, focusing on prevention, compassion, and early support for both people and animals at risk. Ava's case became a model for change. The state adopted policies to prioritize family reunification whenever possible, investing in mental health and addiction recovery for parents in crisis. Training programs for first responders now included stories from the sanctuary, teaching empathy alongside procedures and protocols. Other towns started their own sanctuaries, inspired by Thunder's example, where animals and people found safety, and sometimes each other. One warm afternoon, the sanctuary held a celebration marking the anniversary of the canyon rescue. Hundreds came. Volunteers, donors, families, even the governor. There were speeches, laughter, and tears. Children drew pictures of Thunder and Ava, pinning them along the fence. Thunder wore a garland of wildflowers. Ava rode on Rosa's shoulders, grinning at the crowd. Maya stood quietly to the side, overcome by the transformation around her. When it was her turn to speak, Maya told the story again, this time less as a tale of miracle and more as a call to courage. Thunder could have run. Rosa could have hidden. I could have listened to fear and turned away. But each of us made a choice. To protect, to forgive, to love when it wasn't easy. That's the legacy Thunder leaves us. It's not about being perfect or never making mistakes. It's about coming for each other when the world goes dark, about standing guard until the light comes back. After the applause faded, the sanctuary's oldest volunteers led a procession to Thunder's pasture. There, Ava knelt beside her guardian, wrapping small arms around his neck. The crowd watched in silence, tears in many eyes, as Rosa joined her daughter, and Maya rested a hand on Thunder's shoulder. For a long moment, the three of them stood together, survivors, family, witnesses to the miracle of a second chance. The years passed, but the lessons endured. Ava grew up with Thunder always nearby. Even as she started school, made friends, and began new adventures, she visited the sanctuary often, returning to her roots, never forgetting the horse who had stood watch over her in the wild. Thunder grew older, his black coat flecked with gray, his steps slower but no less proud. He remained the children's favorite, gentle and wise, a reminder that true strength is found in gentleness, and that heroes sometimes have hooves. Rosa's advocacy changed countless lives. By sharing her own story, she helped reduce the shame and stigma around seeking help, especially for mothers struggling in silence. She worked with lawmakers, social workers, and healthcare professionals to make resources more accessible, to recognize the signs of crisis before tragedy could strike. Through Rosa, the sanctuary's mission reached far beyond its fence, touching families and communities that might otherwise have felt invisible. Maya, for her part, found meaning in the small, everyday acts. The smile of a child meeting a horse for the first time, the relief on a parent's face after a counseling session, the quiet satisfaction of watching Thunder graze in the evening sun. She knew now that heroism was rarely about grand gestures. It was about showing up every day for the people and creatures who needed her most. On a bright spring day, as Ava and Rosa played together in the pasture, Thunder stood quietly beside them, his shadow stretching long and steady across the grass. Maya watched from the fence, a gentle smile on her lips. She reflected on everything they'd survived, the terror and loneliness of that dawn in the canyon, the pain of separation, the hard road of recovery. And she realized that true courage isn't the absence of fear or regret. It's the willingness to protect, to forgive, and to love, even when the odds seem impossible. It's about making the choice to care, over and over, no matter the darkness, no matter the differences between us. As the sun dipped low over the sanctuary, painting the sky gold and pink, Maya whispered a silent thanks. To Thunder, to Ava, to Rosa, and to everyone who had chosen hope. The story of the Canyon Guardian had begun with a wild horse and a child in peril, but its legacy would endure for generations, a beacon of compassion, resilience, and the unbreakable bonds that can be forged even in the most unlikely places. And so, with every new dawn, the sanctuary stood as a promise. No one is ever truly alone, and together, even the most wounded hearts can find their way home. Underscore, 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 underscore. Thank you for listening to the story of Thunder, Ava, and Rosa. If their journey inspired you, please like, follow, and share our channel to help spread more stories of courage and hope.